Hi, Roy here on my channel Roy Reads Anything, which is normally or mainly about old books. This time it's about old heroes in new books and whether that's a good idea. So, went on a trip last week. Kind of a melancholy and difficult time, so I knew it was going to be um, I knew there'd be a lot of waiting around and that I wouldn't really have much capacity for reading. And in that situation, I didn't really want to take like my favourite books or books I've been really looking forward to reading, lest they be tainted with the misery of what was happening. So I got a couple of books that I thought, yeah, these look pretty interesting. I'm interested to see how they work out, and I um, won't care if I hate them or if I can't manage to read them. So one was The Perfect Assassin by James Patterson with Brian Sitz, and the other Charlie Higson's Shiny on His Majesty's Secret Service, a James Bond adventure. So sorry for the reflections. This is a library book, so hence the shininess of its plastic sleeve.
Is it shining with the beauty of a public library?
It is the beauty of a public library,
Beauty
yes,
of a public library.
which is always good. So yeah, so why pick this up? Well, not a big James Patterson fan, but I knew it was something to do with Doc Savage, the pulp adventure hero. In fact, the American edition calls it a Doc Savage adventure in the branding. Um, but the UK blurb says, at this school, the first lesson is survival. Dr. Brant Savage's plans for his sabbatical from the University of Chicago change drastically when he is enrolled in a school where he is the sole pupil. His professor is relentless in her lessons. She's also his captor. Savage is forced to undertake intense physical and mental training, with no idea why he was chosen or what's expected of him. But as he learns more about his abductor, Savage discovers just how deeply entwined their lives are, and why together they must make a pledge: do right by all and wrong to none. So, knew it was a Doc Savage book, and it's a character I like. So, Doc Savage, a pulp adventure character from the 1930s, originally published in Doc Savage magazine, 178 super sagas that started reappearing in the 60s in paperbacks, like this one I've randomly pulled from the shelves, The Man Who Shook the Earth. So, Dr. Clark Savage Jr. trained from birth to be a perfect physical specimen and genius,
Is he
and
the
becomes a
man?
crime fighter.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Is he man of bronze?
He is the man of bronze, yes, yes,
Ah,
because of his unusually bronze skin, often revealed by his torn shirt, which happens not in some kind of pervy way. So this great character, and the stories were continued from the 90s through until fairly recently by Will Murray. I was really enjoying those. Then the Will Murray books stopped appearing.
ooh.
I don't know anything about rights or stuff, but you know, no more Will Murray books, and rumours start of the James Patterson books. The same deal with The Shadow, another pulp hero from the 30s. So whatever the reasons behind it, it felt a bit like we're playing a game at school, and the richest kid in the school takes your ball away. The richest kid being James Patterson. See, that's my. So I'm kind of a bit prejudiced against it, but what the hell? Like I say, I wanted some low stakes reading, and I enjoyed it more than the Shadow one. I'll say that. It's for the first 160 pages, having only read the English blurb. So yeah, what happens on is it's as the blurb says, this guy suddenly captured, and he's being put through this grueling training routine. So he's captured by this woman, and there's flashbacks about her life, which is that old chestnut of the young girl who's been raised in a school for assassins behind the Iron Curtain that we've seen in Black Widow, and I think a film and a TV series, Hannah, is that what it was called?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's that. And now she's training him to this like ultimate perfection. So I thought, oh well, they've taken that idea from Doc Savage, and that's all it is. But then, and this isn't a spoiler because the American blurb explicitly says he's the grandson of Doc Savage, right? So it's the real Doc Savage, and he's his grandson, and now he's being trained in the same sort of way. Um, Although interestingly, they've dropped that American blurb. Now says famous action heroes. They've stopped. They seem to be on and off about Doc Savage. I can understand the Brits because it's like, well, no one's heard of him, so we'll just sell it on its own merits as a modern thriller. And maybe because there was, as well as these great magazines and books, there was a film in 1975
Saw
that is
it.
incredibly campy. Yes.
Saw it.
Um, and if people are remembering that, they might be like laughing before they before they get to the story.
I remember it as being quite exactly as you just described, actually.
If you There's about 15 good minutes in it.
Yeah.
Yes. So modern story. The Doc Savage stuff starts. He's his grandson, and there's some quite nice stuff about the legacy of Doc Savage. One thing about original Doc Savage is he had a fortress of solitude, and so that and his sort of powerfulness is ideas that seem to have found their way into Superman. So you get things like that in this book, and it's sort of okay. It's what I although I wanted easy reading, I find the Patterson House style, the short sentences and short chapters, it does the opposite of what you'd think. It makes it so choppy and stop start. It's not actually that easy to read because nothing ever goes anywhere. Um, yes, I wouldn't read another one. Probably, I mean, I would if I was in a cabin and it was the only book, but it's fine as a modern thriller. But I can't see the point of taking a great legacy character and kind of diluting his whole business to this extent, really. Which
They de-bronzed him.
they have de-bronzed him, but
De-bronzed.
fair play to Sitz and Patterson. His shirt does get ripped,
Oh, good. That's
so
all right then.
there's efforts are being made. Yeah, which brings us to Charlie Higson's James Bond book, a tie-in with the coronation of King Charles. So famously rushed out um, in time for that event.
Oh,
It's
dear.
160 pages long, exactly the same length and the same form of manufacture as a Black Horse Western, as described in previous videos. So it's a short read, and obviously it's set in the present day. Um, so James Bond, spy character created by Ian Fleming. Books started coming out in 1955, ran through into the early 60s, and in loads of movies. I'm saying I always assume everyone knows everything, but might have not got the memo about that.
Didn't realise he came out the same year as me.
Yeah, yeah, you
Yeah.
you you are him.
I am
But
him.
of course,
That's true.
he wasn't a newborn baby
No,
in
no.
his first
So I
adventure.
probably would
That
have had.
would be great if they're like in the casino and they just
Here's
throw a
a
newborn
baby.
baby onto the roulette table.
As
Um,
long as that wasn't me, that
yeah,
would be
no, I don't
fine.
think so. I don't think so. You'd be good as a Bond villain with your
Oh, good.
doctorate.
Oh,
Um,
cackle with the best of them, mate.
yes, yeah. Anyway. So James Bond. So he's kind of in his 30s in his first canonical adventure. So he's probably born about 1920. He was in the Second World War. But there's been lots of sequel novels since then, ignoring, movies have their own reality, but sequel novels, um, and those fall into two groups. Some are treated as like historical stories. So the recent ones by Anthony Horowitz, for instance, there's three of those, pretty good. Um, they're set back in the 1960s, and that's kind of fun because you get have 60s stuff happening. Others, he just happens to be in the present day. So all the John Gardner ones that start in the 80s, Raymond Benson. Benson had him attending a historical event as well. Actually, the independence of the what's the word, when Hong Kong stopped being part of the British
Thing.
protectorate, I suppose
British
it was,
thing.
wasn't it? Yeah. So that was anyway. Yes, they're just in the modern day. So what's happened to all these old books? Did they happen? Did some sort of more recent version of these stories happen in, you know, the 80s or the 90s or the 2000s? So Higson specifically says, Bond had never known anything other than metric currency and measures. Um, whereas original James Bond, he could have been at the coronation of Queen Elizabeth, which might have made a better story. Um, so anyway, yes, the time, and there's no explanation. It's not like he doesn't have a youth serum, or it's not his grandson. He just happens to be in the present day, which is kind of weird. Imagine if Richard Sharp, Bernard Cornwell's hero from his novel set in the Napoleonic War, it's just suddenly he's in the Boer War now, or the First World War, with no actual explanation of why that is.
And it's that universe of where people don't get any older, like William Brown.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, you could see James Bond as being a sort of eternal character, like
William
William
Brown.
Brown in the books that sometimes referred to as the Just William books. Um, who knows? Anyway, it's a James Bond novel wrapped around the coronation. And it's fine. I'd recommend reading it. It's hard to take it seriously as a canonical story, really. Not just because why isn't he 103, but also, or if he is 103, he's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
I want the statins he gets, the stuff he gets up to, the saucy fellow. Um, but also, it's kind of, it's modern. It's in the modern political world. This Bond hates. He's against the far right extremists. He would be against the far left as well. So he's kind of a sort of a militant centrist, I suppose. And it's, yes, if you want to see surrogates for some of the hate figures of the current world being taken out by James Bond, this is the book for you.
I'm guessing that's not taken out to dinner.
Not taken out to dinner, no, no. And that is sort of. He talks about his peripatetic life and how he lives in hotels, but he's actually implied that he's not unfamiliar with the Premier Inn.
Hurrah!
So, which was fantastic in a way, but yes, but is that the real? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think I'll carry on reading Bond sequels by anybody, pretty much forever, I think. Um, but I also think there's a case for focusing more on them as historicals, because the times of the original stories are now so different and so marked, and probably so fertile in terms of story possibilities that maybe that's better. So yeah, one for the charity shop, one for going back to the library, and that was my reading on my trip. Okay, questions, answers. Do comment if you've read books like this, if you like updated heroes in the present day, or if you think they should be left in the past where they belong. Okay, back soon with something else.